This is the GSD podcast, and this is your host, Jeff Kushmerek.
And we are good to go. Kris, well, so first of all, I'm super excited because I have an actual CEO on the podcast. Not saying that, there's a big difference between me being a CEO and you being a CEO, because you're a CEO of a large company, Sendoso. Kris Rudeegraap, thank you so much for reaching out and then just we had a fantastic conversation that I was like, oh my God, I wish I was recording it, but then like, hey, let's definitely let's record the next one and go through it. So welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Jeff. Appreciate it.
So for the few people out there who don't know what Sendoso does, why don't you give them the 30-second elevator pitch?
Yeah, so we are a direct mail and gifting platform. So we help other companies build better relationships with their prospects and customers by way of sending them stuff. It could be swag, it could be a welcome kit for a new customer, it could be a milestone, like if a customer graduates from onboarding, or a life moment too. It could be if a customer has a baby and they're a New York Yankees fan, maybe you send them a Yankees onesie. Yeah. So there's lots of different ways for you.
I can't believe you use Yankees for me.
Yeah, I knew you're a Boston guy, so I figured I'd make it hurt.
You don't have access to those M&Ms that you get people's faces printed on, do you?
We could do quite about anything. In fact, Oreos are one that we have quite a bigger success with, where we can print on Oreos because there's a little bit more surface area. So that's pretty cool.
It's on the list. This is a very short list I have here. That is amazing. That is, I just signed up a new customer, so Oreos on the way, right? Like, yeah. That's great. So I was fascinated because you do a lot of stuff. I believe you're Series D. I don't mean to right. So, but still, the stuff that you're doing, I don't even see from like people, the founder sort of level of the maybe seed, Series A, and everything. So I was just really fascinated by how customer centric that you as a CEO. This is a funny conversation we had before that. How I don't like that term that much for CS leaders, but I love it for CEOs as well. Yes, or customer focused, I should say. But in many different ways too. So where did that come from like the gifting feel of it, or have you always been this way, or just curious where that sort of motion came from?
Yeah, so I mean, I spent a decade or more prior to starting the company in sales, and I think as a seller, you have to be very, customer facing or prospect facing. You're always on calls, you're always doing demos, you're always meeting with people in real life. And so my hunger for meeting people from a sales perspective really transitioned into my hunger to try to really wow our customers and meet our customers more and learn from our customers. And, I think at the very beginning, when you have a handful of beta customers or design partners, all the way to hundreds of customers and, tens of thousands of users, it's still equally important to be customer focused.
Yeah, it's just, we're going to keep saying it.
I almost said centric.
I have nothing wrong with it. It's just this weird little thing for, yeah, it'll all get cut out in the wash, right? But we'll have AI just overdub everything and stuff like that. So, but the first thing we were talking was that and I'm sure your CS team loves this, by the way, that you are doing audits of your customers. And so just talk to me, like, what does that look like? And what do you do with that information when you go in and do that?
Yeah. So, for me, I feel like I try to be the most advanced power user of Sendoso. I also have a unique sales background and I've been obsessed with kind of CRM and how to, look at data there. And we also use Catalyst. And so, my goal with all that being that I have like a really unique perspective on what does a successful customer look like? What's successful engagement look like? What are nuances that maybe a CSM or an account manager might overlook? and pattern recognition across years and years of doing this. And so what I find myself doing from time to time is I will proactively audit accounts, and I'll look for how they're using Sendoso, what's the usage data, but also other areas like how are we engaging with the right champions? How are we engaging with the executives at our customer? What is our, what's a healthy account plan look like? And are we doing that? And a lot of it is in spirit of helping the CX team find areas that I could help. And also for a lot of those, I have executive connections and I don't want to just go into those accounts blind. So rather than going into those accounts and looking dumb, I do an audit, which both helps me understand where there might be areas of opportunity, but also helps me really learn about that customer, their usage, their business, their users, et cetera. And so typically it's a couple pages of a couple areas. And then, oftentimes I can get in the weed and find little leaky buckets that we could solve for.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Hopefully the team learns from those and then they can then apply to,
For sure, they have. And I think, as we've just scaled fast and have added hundreds and hundreds of employees, there's, tribal knowledge or things that maybe someone didn't know about or forgot about or didn't get taught. And so I can come in there and chime in and say, hey, here's something that, we've done before that might be helpful for you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. What are some other sort of these customer assistance strategies that you like to sort of roll out?
Yeah, so I have a CEO roadshow that I do that I think is super helpful. So I will meet with probably about 200 customers a year. I'll usually do about 100 of those in a short sprint of a probably 2-month period, of which
that is a lot.
Oh yeah, my calendar is frightening. Where I might have 12 meetings back to back, 30 minutes of pretty much the same presentation and talk track, where I'm sharing our roadmap, I'm sharing some of our vision, I'm asking questions, the same questions. And so some of their responses and feedback are different, but it's kind of synonymous to some of my sales days where, my demo pitch was very
the script, boom, 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 roll them up. Yeah,
the discovery and learning is all different. And so it would be, back to back to back 30-minute calls, followed by typically 30 minutes of follow-up effort, thanking the customer, sending them a gift, and then also creating some notes that I can share back with the CSM and account team that they can follow up on. So I find that incredibly useful. I'll do some of those in person, some of those virtually. And then throughout the year, I'll scatter in more of those ad hocly based on product launches, based on field events, based on conferences that I'll go to, and then I'll build meetings around it with customers. So I find that to be super helpful.
That's great. And I don't think we went over this before. Do you have sort of a standard customer advisory board or an executive board with the customers, or any different levels of those?
I'd say there's 3 things that we have. So one is a customer community. We call it a super sender group. There's about 1,000 users in this group.
Okay.
It's a Slack group. There's sub channels. There's kind of peer-to-peer conversations. I chime in with thought leadership into that group. There's Q&A, there's AMAs, there's a lot of talk tracks going on in that community. We then have cabs. Typically, we'll have some in-person cabs throughout the year where these customer advisory board meetings will be more in-depth. Typically we'll have product presentations and other areas for us to really go into the weeds. And then I have a personal industry advisory group that I have probably about 100 of our customers in, and then there's about 100 non-customers. And this is what I call micro advisory group I set up a while back to just have this sounding board where I might ask them thought leadership questions. I might ask them for referrals for recruiting. I might ask them for their interest in talking on a panel. And my goal there is that it outlasts the customer relationship and is a more personal relationship that they'll carry on if they're at 5 years at different companies. They could still be my advisor, which might differentiate from our customer community or our customer advisory board, where once they change companies, if they're not a customer yet, they kind of fall out of that group at times. And so it's a helpful way to have a lot longer lasting relationships with people in the industry.
No, that's great. You had mentioned the recruiting, which reminded me of this thing, and I might have it wrong, but we were talking about advocacy.
Yeah.
And it is a funny note, like when I go in to help companies, that was like the last thing we do. Like, hopefully we're in long enough to like, hey, let's set up your advocacy. My typical speech is like, we want customers to not, you don't want to stop at renewals. We want to get to the part where they're advocates and they're doing press releases and, taking calls with prospects and things like that. But did you say something like your eighth employee you got from advocacy, or what was that story?
Yeah. So we really early on wanted to invest in our kind of customer advocacy and really build a community. We were inventing a new category while gifting is not necessarily like brand new. Using a platform like Sendoso and creating an evergreen strategy to integrate this into your customer programs or your marketing programs was nuanced, and using software to do so was. So the goal with this early on was we knew we wanted to really build a community of advocates that could spread the word, that could be, that could educate us on their needs and how we could continue to build our roadmap. So building that community from the beginning was helpful. We needed someone to do that. We also very early wanted to build out a repertoire of customer case studies, customer references. And so all those made sense to bring in kind of a customer advocacy and customer marketing leader in the very early days.
Right. And you still have somebody just focused on the advocacy, like that's their role, that's what they work on?
Yeah. She's been on this for like 6 years now, or 5 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And we have others now that have joined that team from community perspective, from lifecycle marketing. But it's amazing to see how she's grown and how she's built like best friends and more than just a vendor relationship, but people that, one of them, I went to their wedding actually, and she did. So there's ways to, build more friendships than just vendorships.
Wow. And because most people do use the term of the vendor relationships. And that's exactly, I think when people hear advocacy, that's what it is. It's like, to make sure we don't ask that same person 6 times in a quarter for a call, right? Like that's a lot different if you're going to weddings and whatnot. So yeah,
totally.
That's amazing. So the big topic I sort of wanted to get into for today was this concept of doing account-based marketing into your customers. And I actually the data point, I was just listening to a podcast with Jay Nathan. I don't know if you know him from GDR. And he brought up this data point. He brought up a data point from Winning by Design. And I think when you get to there's some number like 50 to 70 million revenue mark, that the high majority of your revenue starts coming in from your existing customers, this concept. So, and then I remember we were talking about that as well. So the very dim bulb started going off in my head, like, we should get into that a little bit. Yeah. So I'd love to hear in general, like your philosophy on account-based marketing to your customers. Like, when did you start this? We'll get into that first. I have many questions, but I want to just start firing them off. Let's start chatting about it.
Yeah. So, I think part of account-based marketing and why we got so, obsessed with it is that, about 8 years ago or so, and I think the term got first coined, we saw that there was a need to integrate in gifting and direct mail as part of an ABM strategy. And so because of that, we said, well, we need to be experts in ABM. And so we need to be so good at it, doing it ourselves and being able to teach our customers who are, maybe newbies in doing ABM. We need to be able to coach them, and not just how to use gifting and Sendoso, but how to do ABM. So because of that, we dove in head first and are really experts across the board in that. And I think some companies focus ABM on top of funnel and kind of stop at the customer. I think that's probably the most common mistake I see is, okay, we've got named accounts and we're going to target them, and we're going to target this buying committee, and then we're going to go and engage them. And then sales and marketing are going to work together on making sure we're running ads against the same accounts the sales reps are going after. And then we close the account and yay, we high five. And then we move on to the next account that we want to do that too.
Take their name out of the marketing, out of the ad buys.
And, the way that I look at it is, well, once they become a customer, now you have a perfect second set of named accounts. The named accounts are your customers. It's very similar. And so what else are you doing to run those same campaign, to run similar or different programs to your customers in the same amount. And I think that that's an area of opportunity for not only landing and expanding, but for advocacy and retention, in that you're running marketing programs to drive usage. You run into some of the same, issues when you're trying to sell into a new account, where you're making sure you have, 4 to 8 people on the buying committee to sign off on that contract. Well, if they're a customer and you only have one person as your single champion, you're going to be single threaded. So you need to do some of those same multi-threading buying group type of programs. And so, there's a lot of similarities. It's just nuanced by, I think, some silos where customer success, might be siloed a little bit from the marketing team. And so we really tried to bring that together from the beginning, so we could educate how account-based marketing can continue indefinitely, and lifecycle marketing can kind of take over where maybe demand gen left off. So we do have different people doing it.
That's what my next question was. Yeah, what's the profile, or is it a different group within CS? Is it part of CS marketing or regular marketing?
Actually, but part of our demand gen group.
Okay.
But within demand gen, there's kind of inbound and ABM focused demand gen, and then there's life cycle focused and ABM focused on customers as well. And so they're goaled slightly differently, but some of the metrics look similar in terms of like the activity and engagement metrics, and they're using some of the same tools. But at the end of the day, the messaging it can be shared, but some of it can be different.
Interesting. And would you pull? And again, this is all new to me, which is one of the reasons why I do this podcast. I learned so much.
Yeah.
Are you also pulling in like usage statistics? Or using like your Catalyst to then, for your demand gen team to be able to see certain users if they're engaged, and then you're targeting them? Or I'm just curious on that. Like, yeah,
100%. So we use a mixture. So a lot of the data sits in our data warehouses, and that gets pushed to some of the different tools we use. We use a mix of Catalyst as well as Iterable. Iterable is more used by our lifecycle marketer to do more of the in-app notifications and nurture, as well as the email nurturing. And that is fully connected to our data warehouse that has all of the product usage data. And so more of the lifecycle programs, and some of the ones we've run recently as it relates to certain things within the product that we know that if you're using it, for example, if you've set up like a Salesforce dashboard to track the success of Sendoso, your likelihood to renew and expand is higher. So we'll run programs to educate that team, to educate our customers on how to do it. When we launch new products, there's education around those products and how they could use those new products, or how they can expand into those new products. And so there's a lot of campaigns we do, and most all of it touches on usage and product data.
Oh, interesting. And is it a certain profiles, or are you just targeting I even hate saying targeting, but are you just sort of using ABM with exec types, or is it people throughout the organization that could be core users, or?
Yeah, we actually segment and run different programs and different campaigns against them. So there could be an existing user who's what we call a manager admin user. And then we segment it even further for what their use case is. Are they in CX? Are they in sales? Are they in marketing? Are they in HR? So it's pretty segmented down. That could be an existing account, but we don't have any communication with maybe their CMO yet. And so we're going to run some kind of ABM programs towards our customers that we want to maybe drive some education into their executive leadership team. And so it's pretty complex and segmented by use case, by persona, and by customer account and or user or non-user too.
Yeah. Well, and for people that aren't familiar with it, like what would that look like to a user? Are they inside your app, or is it following them like when they're on LinkedIn or in Amazon targeted ads, or what is that sort of?
So we will do a mixture of all of that. We'll do in-app notifications, we'll do emails, we'll do ads, retargeting our users. And some of those retargeting our customers are more for expansion too. so that we're driving more usage and driving more users to start using Sendoso.
Interesting. I can imagine that it will also help when you're working within like a conglomerate, or a company of both companies, right? My classic, the one that I have a lot of experience is when we sold into Yum Brands, and I was working with Taco Bell, and then we're selling into Kentucky Fried Chicken, and those sort of examples as well too. Yeah, that's great. Does anybody ever say just turn it off? I can't, or do they know it's coming from you? Or
we've seen a handful of customers, and this is a handful out of thousands, where they want to restrict communication to certain users and say, hey, please communicate everything through me. And we really shun that kind of activity, because it's like, well, most of what we're trying to do is educate. And it's not, and in a lot of cases, it's not even salesy at all. It's like, hey, here's new, but we have to abide by what our customers want at the end of the day. So a couple of our customers, we have very strict communication strategies, but we have a hierarchy in terms of how we communicate. There's a kind of an operational comms, campaign comms, nurture comms, survey comms, and marketplace comms that we've separated out and have allowed us to maybe turn off one of those and turn on another for our customer, which makes it so that we can at least abide by what they want.
Yeah. I understand. Well, not that I've definitely seen that behavior. Interesting when I worked for software that sold into HR, the HR team was always like, no, we send out the communication. We don't want that. And that was also where I learned that like they didn't like agile releases. It's like, no, we only want to tell people what's changed once a year. Like this is our yearly update and everything. Like, well, we change our stuff like every 2 weeks. So
we've had that happen a couple of times too, which baffled me, because I thought the customer would be so happy that we're innovating and adding new stuff. And one customer was like, hey, please give us months warning before you add something new. So
that's exactly what we got.
Like months warning. We're rolling things out faster than that. This is gonna be hard to
I know.
do. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, there's some change management, and certain companies take on change management enablement differently. Or they might have had a bad taste in their mouth from something that exploded on them in the past. So I think it's more of an anomaly than a norm. And most customers are open to communication and want more of it. Are happy to sign up for more communication, happy to get news from us, happy to join our community, happy to join our customer education programs and our university programs.
So with all of this in place, and if you don't mind, and I can always stop the recording, what does the sort of org and reporting structure look like for the post-sales team with all these sort of different initiatives in place?
Yeah, so we have a chief customer officer that then actually reports into a chief business officer that then reports into me. Okay. Chief business officer looks after all of sales, all of marketing, and all of CX, with the goal that they are really all inclusive to the customer from day one to day a million. And so we wanted to make sure that there was no silos of kind of post customer or marketing and sales being siloed. So that was critical there. And then account management rolls into our chief customer officer. Customer education rolls into our chief customer officer. Customer success. Onboarding rolls in there, and our nuances. So customer marketing reports in through marketing, and customer advocacy and lifecycle marketing report into our marketing leader. And then our solutions engineers, who actually do pre-sales and post-sales, like integrations and technical conversations, report through sales.
Oh, okay. That's great. Yeah. I thought you were going to say for the CCO, it does not matter for me as far as I'm concerned. I've seen success in both ways, but the only time I suggest putting it under this post sales is when you need to change those behaviors, right?
Yes.
Like you are now comped on retention instead of logo sales, but only when that's an issue, anything.
Exactly.
So what are some new, because you've been doing a lot of this like from the jump. So what are some of the newer initiatives that you're thinking of going, or just iterating on some of these things, or what didn't work and now we're going to try doing X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that come to mind. One is we're gonna we had our Sendoso University, which just has so much interesting data for our customers. We had that gated behind a login.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of ungating that and making that content freely available to anyone.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. I've seen it both sides where people are like protective of all of their customer related trainings and customer content. But for us, we still want to educate the market more. And if you're a prospect and you want to learn some of the ways to use our platform better, and it might be a helpful tactic to drive pipeline.
I'm all for keeping it open and everything. Also great for SEO, but like besides
exactly.
it's just I've seen the benefits. I had to launch one of the first customer sort of portal discussion and documentation things back, I don't know, or let's just say mid 2000s. And the dev team did not want that doc getting out there at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then also people were like, oh, they're, very high executives were wondering, like, people might go into a forum and see some complaining going on. And we're like, right, well, then product can go in there and dev can go in there and we can see what's going on. And, don't need to, we've had podcasts on community, so I don't need to get into the benefits of community and everything. But like, there are lots of people who are, very much gatekeepers of some of that things. And it's great to hear you're moving towards that model because, I think it'll be super successful. So, yeah.
Yeah, other things we're doing, certification program.
Oh, nice.
And we're expanding that out. We had a lightweight version of that, but we're doubling down, and then we're doing it across a lot of the different use cases. So before it was a very high level program where you could become a super sender, which is basically what we call our community. But now we want you to be like certified. We want to have a badge and a certificate and run it. So
certification, is it mandatory, or is it definitely something that they can print off and put on their desk, but they're not gated from using the product until they get it?
Not gated. So it's something that's optional and something that we see as hopefully an opportunity for our users that can learn more and can benefit from that. So that's important. A nuance for us is that we were, for the first 6 years, we were very sales led and customer success led. Mm-hmm. That, every new customer was signed a contract, talked to sales, and then was onboarded by onboarding and customer success. Mm-hmm. The last 6 months, we've rolled out a PLG self-service flow. And so for us, that's a nuance in terms of being comfortable with the user coming into our platform, never talking to us, and servicing. And so we're about 6 months into that, and there's some nuances in how do we do customer success to self-service. So that's a nuanced. And then, I think about a year ago, we turned on like a digital touch or a customer success at scale strategy for a subset of our kind of lower SMB type of customers that didn't need as much handholding. And so that's still something that we're evolving in terms of how do we automate more of the education, the engagement. And this is really where account-based marketing, lifecycle marketing become critical because there's less human-to-human engagement happening.
Yeah. Well, those two things will blend nicely, the PLG and the digital touch. Right? Yeah. It takes some cycles, absolutely, to get through, but you're already on the ball in terms of having a marketing machine that can, get those signals that people need the message and those fun things. So,
exactly.
Wow, that was great. Before we move into non-CS and fun stuff, anything else that you're working on this angle of the customer side?
We revised our health score recently, so that's something that I think is something that we were proud to spend a quarter or so on, really rethinking how do we think about health scores. So I think that was interesting.
Is that a combo, or so assuming you're using a CSAT, MPS type of thing, and then you're doing some other metrics as well too. But a combo of user engagement on those surveys and things like that.
Yeah, it's a combination of user engagement, of product usage. There's some sentiment based on the CSM.
Yep.
And then, I think we've evolved what are the product indicators of success versus because I think there's so many different product data points.
Yeah.
And are you tracking the right ones, or are the right ones weighing out the other ones? So, I think it's worth going back semi-frequently to see, hey, especially in the last year and a half where things have changed quite a bit in terms of the macroeconomic climates.
Yeah.
So we wanted to go back and see things that maybe were nuanced that weren't included before.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I think that also gave us an opportunity to look at kind of the data hygiene, making sure we are tracking everything correctly, doing an audit of what we are tracking, and also making sure that we're structuring our data the correct way so that engineering and product are contributing to helping evolve our health score, and it's not just blocked by what CS wants.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's awesome. Well, so Kris, that was amazing. Thanks for walking us through. As I said, the first time I was just so blown away that you're, all the details of all of these sort of customer interactions, because not every CEO is so hands-on in those matters. They'll tell you about every sales deal maybe, but but go into that. So what's, it's summertime. It's like, July when we're recording this, and what, any big summer plans, any travel? I know when you say travel, I don't mean off to customers or anything, but any non-work fun stuff that you're thinking about?
For sure. So I was just in Europe. So I was in France, and I was in Germany, and I was in Ireland, and I was in the UK. And then next month in August, I'm going to Italy for fun for kind of the kind of south area, kind of
nice.
the coast.
Yeah.
And then going to some of the Spanish islands like Mallorca.
So that's
awesome. Fun. And then we'll usually do a Yosemite backpacking trip once a year.
That's on the list. My kids are old enough now that we did a huge Sedona thing last year, and they're like, we're all set on the hiking for a little while.
So I brought my wife along once, but it's like a 4 or 5 day pretty.
Oh, so you go in,
pack in, backpack everything, So I've done it for probably the past 15 years. I love it. Crazy enough, this year I was supposed to go last weekend, but the roads are still closed with snow, and the trails are still closed with snow.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine.
Yeah, I can't imagine that.
That part of the country is getting. So I have to push that back till next month. So I'm hoping that, we have a warmer summer in that part of California. So.
Wow. That's great. Wow. I'm jealous, especially the Europe stuff. But I'll get back over there soon. But my family, like everybody but me, is going over to Italy next year.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, me and my youngest, but one of those pre-college, go over and that's great. But listen, you're very generous with your time. I'm gonna stop the recording in 1 second. I'll put all your contact info where people can find you in there. Okay. And really appreciate you coming on and giving us CEO's perspective on this crazy world of customer experience. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff, for having me.
Hold on 1 second here.